Welcome, everybody. Welcome to JEDI Disruptions. These are direct, crisp conversations with leaders on technology and science. My name is André Lezogo-Pietri. I'm the director of JEDI, which is the Joint European Disruptive Initiative, the European Initiative for Disruptive Innovation. And as you know, we're launching grand challenges on environmental, healthcare, digital, and also new frontier topics, means space and oceans. And today we are absolutely delighted to have one of the stars of the tech area in Europe, Florian Reuter, who leads Volocopter. You will tell us everything about Volocopter, but this is already a household name. You're a key member of the deep tech ecosystem, based out of Germany, but most of it you are on a plane or on a drone, you'll tell us. So without further ado, Florian, why don't we jump directly and tell us maybe on the broad picture, what did this crisis teach us? I mean, what was the impact for you? But mostly, what are the learnings that we should take out of this incredible crisis we are out or in still?
So, Andre, first of all, delighted to be on your show. Thank you very much for hosting me.
I forgot to say that you are a long-standing JEDI, so
I am.
Great
I've been
to have you
for quite some time. Absolutely. So, this long-standing crisis, I think, Corona really offers us an opportunity to reflect, right, on some of the developments we've seen on the broader political scale, as well as on a societal level, with respect to, what is important and what is not so important to us. And I think everyone has made his own very personal experiences over the past weeks. But I've come to value, certain things in our society much more now that we've gone through this crisis. Obviously, every business is also significantly impacted by Corona in one shape or another. And as a tech startup located in southern Germany, we are obviously also affected by Corona and thinking about what are the short-term and the long-term consequences Corona will have, and how will it shape our society and also business context going forward. For us, the most important one short-term was, are we sufficiently financed, right? Luckily, we don't have any revenue to lose yet because we're still pre-revenue. So, coming full circle now with our certification of our novel air vehicles.
I love the way you say it's a luxury not to have revenues, but it
actually is. If you're well-financed, then that's a luxury to have. But obviously, we were most concerned about whether we would lose momentum in our development. And, we try to make sure, despite everyone being in home office, we have a strong, let's say, cross-functional team, right, of hardware, software development, systems engineering, all coming together. Obviously, we need a very intensive exchange. We need access to our labs. We need to conduct flight testing with our vehicles. But I think we managed to actually get through this period of Corona-induced lockdown quite well. We have a very young and smart workforce, so for all of us, it was very natural to move, into virtual meetings and all that. And we've
Remind us, how many people are you?
We are 150 and continue to grow strongly. So from that angle, Corona actually is a big opportunity because we are now getting to hire profiles so much faster and so much easier that were difficult before. Simply because of the crisis that the entire aviation, but also automobile industry is going through.
Wonderful. So tell us, good for Volocopter. Obviously, the crisis is terrible in your industry. Drones, air taxis, flying cars. Give us a sense of where the frontiers are and which are the ones that you're trying to break.
So, as Volocopter, we started out with developing a revolutionary air vehicle, which is all electric, looks like a giant drone, right? Extremely safe because of the high level of redundancy we have. It's very quiet, so we expect it to achieve a very high degree of public acceptance, right, for the operations, even within cities. And that's where we also see the greatest potential for it. Many people now, always have this view of the Jetsons in their mind when we talk about flying cars or air taxis. I think it's going to be a while until we see such common use of this technology as illustrated in the Jetsons. Nevertheless, I think we are seeing the humble beginning of a whole new mode of transportation in its emergence, in its nascency, and therefore don't underestimate the impact air taxis will have on our cities in the midterm. And I think most people don't realize on how far the technology has already come. And I think Volocopter has been a pioneer in that space. We're about 2 years from launching first commercial services. That's much sooner than most people expect. And also how far certification has come. So EASA, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, has issued a whole new category for air vehicles, such as the Volocopter, just last year. And we now have a concrete roadmap aligned with the certification agency on how to get to these certifications that are required to offer these commercial services. So this is much closer than most people think. And we are really excited to bring this, to the cities around the world within the next 2 years, and then, scaling from the initial pilot cities.
Yeah. So I'm going to push you on the technology side. Tell us what you particularly, and what the industry, I mean, your industry you're in, has achieved, be it on storage, autonomy. You talked about redundancy. Give us a bit of the key building blocks that you had to overcome and that are still in the next years to come.
So I believe we saw a number of technology trends that were necessary to really enable us to build air vehicles as we see them today. And that's not only true for Volocopter, but also for other projects around the world. I think the first one is really, the ability to have a computer control a very complex airplane, right? We've seen autopilots in the past, but if you look at what Airbus has been doing on the large commercial airliners, that it seems like, I don't want to say dinosaur technology, but we've really implemented everything that was state of the art into the Volocopter, right? We have more than
Guillaume from Airbus will love to hear being called a dinosaur. But
I think this is a paradigm that is difficult for the aviation industry and has been in the past, because you were required to make technology freeze at such an early stage that at the time that you went through the certification process, the technology that you were bringing to market actually was already outdated. But you didn't have a chance to catch up on it, because again, you would have to go through the entire certification process. And this is something that I think the certification agencies have understood, and they're trying to find adequate solutions for it. It's not trivial, but we're trying, right? And we're doing our best together. So hopefully going forward, we would see much faster innovation cycles coming out of aviation in general. And I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just kind of explaining the way that we tackled this topic, because we are more coming from a tech background or a software-driven background rather than an aviation background, right? So there's a host of different technologies that are now being applied to aviation. Let me put it that way. So the
reminds of what's going on in the car industry, where obviously also people coming from the software world had the capacity to actually update their operating system overnight, which took 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely.
When he was fast.
So it's the computing power, the ability to control, and that in a very robust and redundant manner. The size, format, the weight, but also the cost involved in all of that, right? To have that computing ability in a flying vehicle was all necessary prerequisites. Secondly, the energy density and power density of batteries. Yeah, I think an air taxi that is kerosene fuel or something will be unthinkable in the city of the future. So we very deliberately took the decision that an air taxi can only fly electric. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable. It will not be allowed to scale. And therefore, we accepted the current limitations of battery technology and set out to build a vehicle and apply it to the right use case where we can accept existing state-of-the-art lithium-ion batteries. And again, we had to go over a certain threshold, but we have crossed that threshold now. We're now in a state where we can build a viable product, go through the certification processes with the existing lithium-ion batteries that we have. I think that's, again, true for the entire industry. And this is certainly a field where we will benefit tremendously in the application of the market potential that we can bring our technology to going forward. So any advances on that side will be highly beneficial for our use cases in our business.
It's incredible how much you talk, but please go ahead, Florian. Go ahead.
And lastly,
software, batteries, and
software, batteries, computing power, software, that combination, batteries, and lastly, I think this plays into the computing power and software, but the ability to actually take out the pilot eventually and fly fully autonomous has a huge impact on our business and our cost position. And the better our cost position, the lower we can put in the prices, the more cost competitive we are with other substitutes on the ground, which will really drive the use of air taxis. And There we are benefiting tremendously from the advancements that we see on the ground, right, in the cars. Yeah. So those are the three key trends that I would see there.
Which one are you trying to master? Which one are you trying to partner or outsource? I mean, it seems that the third one, you're trying to pick the best of what is developing in probably cars.
So core in-house, we're focusing on the ability to really control the aircraft in a robust and safe manner in order to also get over that certification threshold. On the battery side, we are way too small an application just yet to drive the development of new battery technology. So that, we're piggybacking on the developments that we see on the EV, electric vehicle side on the ground. And on the autonomy side, again, you can sink so much money on that. I think we have a very unique position in the market. It's a very prospective market, and therefore we're able to strike very significant partnerships on that. So for example, Intel and Micron, are two leading players in that field, are invested as shareholders in Volocopter. We have joint development projects on that. And we are partnering with the likes of Honeywell or other startups that are focusing on the autonomy piece in order to kind of integrate existing systems into our Volocopter rather than focusing all of our resource allocation towards the autonomy element. So that's more a partnering approach on the autonomy element for now.
How much is the fact that you're based in Europe an advantage, or what are the challenges associated with it?
I see both. That's a good question. Advantage, definitely the very high level of certification quality that we have, right? You can't buy your way into the market with an EASA. I think that's an important message that is very well respected all over the world. EASA, together with FAA in the US, are the two leading regulation authorities in the aviation space, and therefore, once we have the EASA certificate, we will be able to serve the world market. That's a huge benefit. And actually, the European authorities are tremendously supporting of this new sector in Volocopter in particular, because I think we're really playing by the rules and have created a lot of trust over the past years with them. So that's a clear advantage. Challenges, it's not trivial, to finance such a capital-intensive topic in the middle of Europe. Unfortunately, we do see that other players in China or the US find it easier to raise these high amounts of capital. At the same time, we've gained a lot of traction. We have a stellar lineup of blue chip companies backing us, so we're managing well. And again, I would say it is a bit more effort on our end than maybe some of the competitors that are directly based in Silicon Valley or Guangzhou. But apart from that, I see the advantages clearly outweighing the disadvantages.
Can we dig a bit deeper? Because often we hear, and I don't want to have those who listen to us stay on that impression that, the Europeans are not able to take as many risks. My very personal opinion on that is that actually the downside in technology is the same everywhere, but the upside in fragmented European market is totally different than the one you would have when you make it big in China or in the US. Would you agree with that statement, or is there a cultural element or a true money issue, a risk taking, an adventurous mentality
mentality issue? So one in general, I would totally agree with you that having a large homogeneous, accessible home market is a huge advantage for many companies that look to scale and start up their business. So yes, I think naturally companies in the US or in China have a market advantage per se. In our case, I would differentiate a little bit more because aviation is particular, and at least we have European Aviation Safety Agency, which is an advantage in our case because at least it is harmonized across all of Europe. Nevertheless, I think in general your statement is correct.
So would you have to redo things? I mean, once you are, for example, authorized to fly in Munich, could you immediately go to Paris? I don't know if London is a good example, or
perfect example,
or etc. Or will there be other local steps and costs that you will need to do?
So without wanting to dig too deep into details of the aviation certification, but there's three elements that we need from the certifier in order to fly. It's one, the ability to design the vehicle, to build the vehicle, and to operate the vehicle. The design and build is regulated by EASA, so we're good on that, right? We can get that once, and then we're good to go in all of Europe.
Market on that.
Operate the vehicle, that's a local element. So there we need air operator certificates in all of the countries individually. That's still a hurdle. If that could be more aligned, that would certainly also benefit our industry, definitely. So there are always some challenges left that a company operating out of China or the US would not have at the outset.
Florian, I mean, you talked a lot about regulators, and it's interesting to see that it's often when you talk about fintechs, when you talk about many digital topics, when you talk about space, and when you talk about GDPR, this is a good example where you have a strong regulator, but then comes the speed element. And we all saw during this crisis that time is accelerating. So what would be your experience and maybe solutions or recommendations of how can regulators that play such an important role, because they're basically framing the market, so it's less and less legal, it's more and more as almost a strategic tool, and look at how the US is doing that with NIST very clearly, but how do you make sure that that does not become a hurdle, because the risk is always to be a couple of years too late. And we hear, oh, we need a sandbox, but let's go beyond that. What would you suggest?
It is a challenge, I agree. And I think, I strongly believe in the need for strong regulators. So therefore, in general, I am accepting, the way that Europe goes in many ways, be it on the aviation side or also, the example of GDPR. We just need to be aware that if we're too slow with adopting a perfect or an awesome solution, technology might be evolving so fast that it bounces back to Europe because it has an economic impact, it has a societal impact. People start, playing with a TikTok or something of that sort without being aware of, what's going on in the background. And then suddenly we find ourselves in a very defensive position against these developments and trends. And therefore, I think if we implement new regulation, we need to be aware of this will have an impact on the competitiveness of our business, both in the positive as well as in the negative. And in order to mitigate the negative, I think the regulator and the political actors behind the regulator need to acknowledge that they need to address these early on to make sure how do we support our businesses cope with this regulation so we can mitigate these negative effects. But they are clearly there, and I see them in many, many domains, including the ones that you mentioned. I think this is a challenge. I don't have a success recipe at hand, but I think having this awareness and then working together with the regulator and not seeing regulator versus business, that doesn't work. In our case, it doesn't work at all. And I see that willingness to cooperate, but often the regulator doesn't even know how to go there. So they actually need us to support them in what is it that they need to think ahead, a step further to kind of enable us to accept the regulation, but not suffer from, competitive negative effects out of those regulations. That was a bit generic, but I think, we need to really take a concrete example to kind of explain that a more concrete.
Very, very interesting. And I make a call to somebody who is maybe listening to us, which is Matthias Döpfner from Axel Springer, because he has been calling and we were completely saying the same for, pop-up regulation, which allows you to say, okay, let's immediately give a framework, let's test it out. Let's not do only sandboxes, because the risk of sandboxes, they remain only for small children. And if it does not work, we change it again. And the big question,
more flexible and adapting. Yeah, that's true.
And the big question is, how do you make that possible in a democratic context with, the traditional lawmaking? But that's another question. We won't go into that. But happy to bring on board on this kind of coalition. I want to ask you, is there any big topic in your field that we're not paying enough attention, be it on the technological side, be it on the societal impact of what you're bringing? Because this will, Volocopter and its competitors, if they succeed to be as good as you, which we all doubt, right? You will change the way we move around cities, especially, right?
Absolutely, and this I think is the thing. We're absolutely here to scale, right? We want to make this a ubiquitous transportation mode in any city that you travel to. And I think the number one concern I currently have is that everyone is betting on electric vehicles, whether it's on the ground or in the air. But really, I think we're paying not enough attention to the recycling of batteries. We're investing into lithium-ion batteries predominantly in such massive amounts, but haven't really mastered to make sure that they come, full circle, are, cradle to cradle. And that really gives me a headache, because we are also betting on the battery. We're saying we can be operated sustainable, which is absolutely true, and we're here because we believe in that. But at the same time, we need to solve, what do we do with the batteries that are at the end of their life cycle, at least for our application? And second life is not the solution yet, right? So we need to really fully recycle them. I know there's processes, but we need to put them into industrial scale at a cost also that's acceptable. And again, there, I think we need the regulator to play a part, because right now this hasn't been thought through, and I'm yet to get a convincing answer on how we're going to solve it. I know technologically it's possible, but not at industrial scale yet, and we need to get there very fast. And we will need that, and we benefit from that going forward. And I think, again, Europe has to play a leading role in this aspect. In this
battery alliance that is pushed by especially Germany, France, and I think Sweden is also part of it now. And there is this recycling component, but let's be a bit straight. I mean, your feeling is that it's not completely thought through yet?
I think very little people actually pay attention to this at this point. Everybody's like, yeah, Tesla is awesome, sustainable. It's not, as long as you don't really recycle the battery. And I have yet to see an industrial process that does that at competitive cost. And I see that still as a great challenge for us as a society. And again, without the regulator, I don't think we're going to get there fast enough.
Be careful, Florian, because we might invite you to the scientific committee of our battery Grand Challenge, because you talk about lithium, which is completely correct.
Yeah.
Which also, by the way, is concentrated in the hands of a few countries.
Yeah.
You can have the same with the heavy metals, especially cobalt.
Cobalt, raw earth materials, all of that.
Absolutely. And cobalt, just as a data point, I knew that from before the crisis. Obviously, now that there is much less car sales than it used to be, we were running out of cobalt in 2023 with the current rhythm of electrification. That is in 800 days. So,
yeah.
Well,
and I know we can with cobalt, we will be able to out-design cobalt, but there's many more challenges in that space, and those we need to master. And I'm not naive, Andre. I know about the initiatives, and I'm happy to jump in if we can also contribute. And ultimately, it's something we need as an industry. So very much embracing your initiatives.
We'll take your word on that. Me to conclude. Obviously, this whole sector is highly strategic. It's about the future of mobility. How do you, as a European player, balance, I would say, the business aspect of things and the fact that this sector of mobility and of software and of flying dynamics is actually something which is playing a critical role within our cities, within our transportation systems, and also within some strategic infrastructure? I mean, how do you, and you have a very vast range of investors coming from all over the world. Exactly. I mean, how do you, the CEO, manage this, and apparently with a lot of success?
Look, we see that this is a technology that really is addressing a challenge that is prevalent all over the world. So we clearly target the world market, and we are very uniquely positioned. So we see a chance to really position us as the dominant player in this new emerging market going forward. And therefore, we want to bring this technology to any city, any mega city around the world. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we're not politically corrupted in any way, right? If you get into the likes of Huawei and so on, that's the sort of discussions you don't want to have. We want to build trustful, transparent relations in let's say, any geography, ideally. I think our shareholder base already gives a strong signal of that. We have Micron, Intel from the US that I mentioned. We have Daimler in Germany, DB Schenker now on our logistics Volodrone business. In China, we have Geely invested in us. In Japan, Japan Airlines, Mitsui Sumitomo Insurances, Sompo Insurances. So I think we're already very vastly distributed. And we have those partners because we believe in their local home markets as well. And we believe that together, locally, we can be successful. And this is the spirit that used to be normal about 5 years ago. And the world really went into turmoil, right? At least for the past 4 years, I would say, without going into more details. And hopefully we will get back into that spirit, because the trends that we currently observe are so politically motivated, and they're really worrying, because ultimately I think we as a human race benefit from technologies being distributed in a fast manner around the globe, rather than keeping them into individual countries and limiting the access to markets. So, we will play our part in getting back to what used to be normal.
Well, on these very wise words, Florian, we could have continued on and on. I want to thank you very much. It was super insightful. We are very happy to have you on board also on JEDI. So for those who are listening to us, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at EuroJEDI. Subscribe our podcast. You will see again this show with Florian Reuter of Volocopter, and we'll see you on the next JEDI Disruption. And stay well, Florian, and fly well.
And we look forward to welcome you on board a Volocopter very soon. Thank you very much.
We're looking forward to it. Bye-bye.
Bye, Andre.